Hello, my name is Sarah Perry and I will be comparing this edition of Telltales. The theme for September's Telltales is What on Earth? So far, Telltales has supported written and spoken word, music and art creations. This month our horizons have been broadened even further and we include animation and sound recordings. Our contributions include poetry and verse, short stories, personal reflections and observations, and film. Although we miss our gatherings in Falmouth's many venues, this format allows you to listen to each piece as many times as you wish, so make yourself comfortable. There are many earth idioms: earth-shattering, down to earth, salt of the earth, hell and heaven on earth, costing the earth, move heaven and earth, and vanish off the face of the earth. We feel the pieces you're about to hear reflect these different nuances. We've divided this month's Telltales into 3 parts. The first part consists of four submissions, which we've grouped under the theme The Freedom to Play. Part 2 includes 2 pieces under the theme Surprise, a Sting in the Tail. The heading for Part 3 is Home and Isolation, and it consists of another 4 submissions. So let's start with Part 1, The Freedom to Play. This section captures the delights of planet Earth. It starts with a piece by Henry Purbrick, and in his usual inventiveness, how could we resist a piece about Telltales itself, entitled What on Earth? This is followed by Nicole Tanya's short story for children, The Inventor of Words. Then Rob Barrett's performance poetry, and lastly a lightweight bit of writing by myself about small and important creatures, the Earthworms.
Hi Telltales, out of this world. Well, this certainly is. This is Henry Purbrick speaking. What on earth? You may need to listen to this twice, perhaps. Or you may get to the end and say, what on earth was that all about? Hopefully it fits the theme. The title is, the date is 4020 and. Hello, my name is Sam 40737 and I'm here to bring you up to date on what's been going on around the world today. But before I go to local information, there's a breaking story from Country 2 which looks as if it will change how we look at the past and what might have preceded us. My colleague John 45627 is on the border of Country 2 and has all the details. John, I understand there has been a find which throws into doubt the predictions and theories the specialists have about what might have gone on in the past. That's right, Sam. And what's happened is that a group of explorers from around the globe have been funded and equipped to spend some months exploring the centre of Country 2 to try and make out and record just what's there. As you know, up until now, all we've known that it's pretty much an empty wasteland almost devoid of life. Well, remarkably, during their searches, this group have uncovered a site that clearly appears to have been constructed by intelligent life. This, of course, throws into doubt all the theories the specialists have had about us humanoids being the first and only thinking being this planet has ever known. I have one of the explorers with me now, only just returned to civilization with this remarkable story. Simon, can you tell us what you found? Well, after a few weeks of investigation, where we found very little of note, we came across a particularly big river down towards the bottom of the country, some distance in from the coast. We followed this for some days and eventually came across a site consisting of very hard rocky material that can't have originated in this area. It was in a narrow part of the river with steep cliffs on either side, and it's like nothing we've ever seen before, and had been clearly moved to the site from some distance away, as it bore no resemblance at all to the surrounding rocks. Can you explain what the stuff was like? Well, it had been mixed together to form a hard rock-like substance which appeared to have been used to block the river flow for some unspecified reason. We're convinced it couldn't have formed naturally, as well as there being a number of huge chunks of it down by the river itself, there were smaller traces all up the sides of the canyon. And on top of that, we found further evidence by way of huge tunnels, which were obviously built by some sentient being and which have been intentionally plugged by this hard rocky stuff. We believe these tunnels were made to temporarily divert the river while the main structure was built. Do you know what it was for? Not yet, but there is some speculation that it was to hold the water back for some sort of engineering project. And it must have been massive in its time, as there are traces of it right up the sides of the canyon, which is hundreds of feet high. It was amazing and must have involved a mass of people and a massive effort and expenditure of energy. Whatever it was for was clearly considered very important, and whoever built it was obviously of an advanced intelligence and used to working on a huge collective project in a collective basis. So this throws out all the theories and beliefs that we're the first and only advanced species ever to exist on this planet. Absolutely. Of course, the evidence will have to be verified and further investigated by more research trips, but based on everything we've brought back and everything I've seen, I'm convinced that at one time there must have been an advanced civilization here that we know absolutely nothing about. Can you explain more about this rocky material, like where it came from and how it was put together? Well, it appears to be made from some small or crushed stone bound together by... Stop, stop, stop. I can't be having all this. This is clearly nonsense and a complete fantasy. Who wrote it? Well, I did. No, you stop. Shh. You're just the author. You're not supposed to be involved in this. But I have to be. He's just asked me who wrote it, and you lot clearly didn't, so I have to be here. I say, it's getting rather crowded in this cupboard, chaps. Are you sure we're not in danger of breaking the rule of 6? Oi, who are you? What are you doing in here? I'm just a cleaner, clearing up all the spare edited out words and dialogue and putting it back in the box for use the next time. Well, you're not wanted and there's no room in here for you, so get out. Okay, I'll come back later when you're all done. No, I think we're okay still with the numbers, with him gone. But I'll have to take this joke out if this gets used anywhere in the future. It's in a few months' time. The audience probably won't get the reference. Can we get back to the point? This is clearly fantastic rubbish and I won't have it. Excuse me, but who exactly are you? I'm from the Ministry of Claptrap, employed by the government to control the proliferation of free-thinking, off-the-wall and generally out of this world literature and art. And this is clearly material of that sort, so I'm sorry, but it has to stop now. It's just a speculative piece about what might happen if our civilization was to disappear and be replaced by another one which had no idea that we had ever existed. Yes, I get that, but we just can't have people thinking outside the box and instigating free thinking amongst the general population. Allowing them to think for themselves and ignore the facts is just not on. It's like something out of Monty Python. Oh, thank you for that. It didn't start out that way, but somehow now appears to be heading in that direction. It was intended as a serious scientific investigation based on the theory that if we all disappeared tomorrow, it would take something like 1,000 years for all traces of us to disappear, and that the last thing to go would be the Hoover Dam in America. Surely that's not such a crazy premise to base a story on. Yes, I can see all that. You don't have to spell it all out like some idiot writer. It's just that all this speculation and science fiction what-ifs have had a bad effect on the population and caused them to begin to think for themselves, and the government are determined it has to stop. So I'm afraid I can't allow this to go on any further. Excuse me, but who are you to say what can and what can't be played here? Hang on a minute, who are you? Where did you come from? I'm the administrator of Telltales, which this is being produced for, and I think I'm the one who decides just what is acceptable and what is not, and I'm sorry, but government snoops have no place here. We believe in free speech and people being able to say what we think, whether it's government policy or not, especially when it's not government policy. So you can just mind your own business and clear off back to where you came from. I won't be silenced as easy as, ouch, get off. There, that's him gone. Government ministers indeed. What do they know about free speech? Please carry on, Henry, with what you were saying. No, I'm sorry, but he's quite put me off. I've completely lost the thread of where I was. It probably wasn't a very good idea anyway. I expect the other contributors to Telltales have much more interesting stories or poems to share. Let me be the judge of that. I'd like you to go on. You were saying how the new generation of people, or whoever they were, have no idea we ever existed. No, sorry, I just can't do it. The moment's past. The inspiration's gone. You could say the parrot is dead if you were of a mind. Well then, I suppose we'll just have to accept that, and I'll just have to wind this up and move on to the next piece. A shame, it was coming along really nice, but can't be helped. So thank you, and here is the next item on tonight's agenda.
I'd like to introduce you to Nicole Del Tenor, who's going to read a children's short story called The Inventor of Words. Nicole, do you want to say a little bit about the story and the book that it's part of, which is A Taste of Destiny?
Yes. I wrote this book after I had a stroke, and the nice thing about it for me is it's written in a dyslexic-friendly version and traditional version. I'm dyslexic, by the way, so that's why I wrote it for dyslexic people. Shall I read the story?
Please do.
Okay. The Inventor of Words. There are many stories about Inventor of Words. Here's one of them. There was once a place where all kinds of people would come and meet. It was called the Café des Importants. They all seemed in their own right quite fascinating. Some were angry with the government, some criticizing greatly and wanting to change the world without even moving their chair out of their chair. Some oblivious to reality, preferring to talk about art with great pretentiousness, feigning to speak with immense knowledge. Some were just utterly bonkers. One thing for sure, they all felt very important. This little world, which was like a big family, gathered daily in this Café des Importants. It was their place, their habitat, their home. It felt safe. Depending on how one looked at them, one would call them mighty boring. The exchanges were so well rehearsed that as time passed by, Their retorts became totally expected. They eventually ran out of words. Why did they bother carrying on talking? Rarely the stew would get interrupted, yet unexpectedly one day a stranger walked into the Café des Importants. The noise fell silent for just a few seconds. Then the crowd soon turned their backs to him. They were clinging on to their habits of great importance and pride, which they never wanted to have disrupted. The stranger went to the counter and ordered a drink, which was served to him with a slightly wary hesitation. While he was drinking, he turned to look around to gauge what was happening in this grotty place. "Who are you?" said a voice. It was a young man sitting next to him, the latest addition to become part of the stagnant crowd. He was green enough for his mind not to have completely seized up, and to fortunately have remained still quite curious. "I," said the stranger with majesty, as if he was standing on a stage, looking at the crowd, head high from the whole corner of his eyes. "I'm an inventor of words." "How can you claim that?" asked the young man. "It doesn't exist." "Who says?" exclaimed the inventor of words with an extraordinarily deep voice. The inventor's dark emerald eyes went silent and half closed, looking in the sky for new inspiration. As soon as he had invented a new word, the word became multicolored and very bright. "Here's one. It's for you. It's a gift," said the inventor, whispering at the young man's ear his newly invented word. "Oh, what a nice word," replied the young man. The word melted in his teeth and softened nearly like jelly on the surface of his tongue. He was tasting the word and rolled it in his mouth on a dynamic tune, and an attractive perfume was emanating in midair. "It's a little bit like music. It bounces and bubbles. It's happy and soothing, and as soft as velvet. It has so many qualities, it's hard to describe, and with such a nice sound." "What is its significance?" asked the young man. "Whatever you want it to mean," said the inventor. "That's the beauty you get when you're an inventor of words. There are no rules. Anyone can become an inventor of words. It only depends on wanting to be one. The numbers of words are unlimited, and you can even go further. You can mix up expressions, modify their combinations, have a variety of languages bunched all together. You can even add squeezes of sounds or make delectable cocktails with them. You could create them to resemble fireworks. You can make anything you want out of the words. Everything is possible except for a few rules in grammar, which is handling the circuits of understanding. But that's okay, because they allow things not to become too hectic." "Wow!" exclaimed the young man, smiling to his ears and twinkling eyes. "This is really cool. I'm getting out of here. Hey, thanks for the tip." And he walked out without finishing his drink. He left to the past what belonged to the past, and at a distance you could hear him joyfully whistling. when now and then the young man would stop, it meant he just invented another word. The inventor of words disappeared. He was the magician of words.
Thank you, Nicole. That's lovely.
Hello, Telltales. My name's Rob Barrett. It's very nice to be with you. I'm up in North Cornwall near Launceston in a place called Five Lanes. And last year, Adrian Jones, one of the directors of Cornwall Folk Festival, he asked me to write a horoscope for the Folk Festival to go in the programme, and it was in the programme. And this is the horoscope, Folk Horoscope by Rob Barrett, astrologer for the mystically challenged. Virgo, August the 23rd to September the 22nd. Because Jupiter is on the cusp of Uranus, you will meet someone who delights in your sense of humour and tunelessness. Avoid organic food and concertinas. On Thursday the 22nd, you will bump into Steve Knightley in Tesco, which is unusual, as he normally shops in the Co-op. Libra, September the 23rd to October the 22nd. Thanks to your influence, today normally dull people will become amusing. You will become powerfully attracted to someone more than you have ever been powerfully attracted before. Then you will realise that it is your reflection in a shop window. With Mars ascending this month, it is a good time to learn the Boron. Remember, as one door closes, a window opens, often because someone has farted. Scorpio, October the 23rd to November the 21st. Cake is well starred this month, so you will eat copious amounts of the stuff and get fat. On August the 25th, you will be forced to deal with a shanty singer who makes you feel uncomfortable. The best way to deal with this is to use physical violence. The full moon on the 14th brings disappointment in money. You will remember that after verbally abusing that nice young man on the phone, you did take out PPI after all. Sagittarius, November the 22nd to December the 21st. The new moon on the 31st will pave the way for romance and a fetish for Victorian waistcoats. That fickle full moon again on the 14th will trigger a troubling realisation that you no longer like rhyming poetry. You will write a new song which has the chorus repeated 20 times so that you can stay in the limelight for longer than anyone else at the sing-around. Capricorn, December the 22nd to January the 19th. Your fiery Capricorn temper flares at the smallest things. So let the rage pass and wait until you can think of a clever, passive-aggressive put-down for that bloke with the bush hat at the folk club who got your name wrong the other night. On the 14th, that bloody full moon will again bring an embarrassing secret to light. You admit to liking Phil Collins. Aquarius, January the 20th to February the 18th. You will satisfy your own desires and radiate positive energy. Under the influence of Neptune, all your internet viewing habits will become known. Your arrest will follow, but you will be released when the disappointed officers find that you have just been watching old Steele Span and Donovan clips on YouTube. Pisces, February the 19th to March the 20th. It is important to face painful truths on the 31st of August, when the new moon means that the night sky is darker than a long and violent folk ballad about a peasant who sleeps on the lily-white breast of a fine lady and who is later skewered on her husband's sharp sword. How did he not see that coming, eh? On the 14th, that effing full moon again warns against unrealistic career expectations. You're retired, so you don't give a shit. Aries, March the 21st to April the 19th. Mercury's transjunction in the lower bottom is set to undermine your plans, so it is not a good time to sign contracts or enter into a verbal agreement. Be vague and waffle like you usually do. Avoid telling jokes about banjos. They're not very funny, are they? Try telling jokes about guitars and mandolins and see how that goes. Taurus, April the 20th to May the 20th. That bloody full moon again on the 14th. There's a lot to answer for. It will force you to confront someone who wronged you many years ago. The confrontation will go well, as neither of you will be able to remember who you are or what you fell out about. The ukulele workshop will go badly when you correct the instructor on finger technique. Gemini, May the 21st to June the 20th. As a Gemini, you know it all. This month Saturn is on side to give you free rein to show off. You will reel off information about the etymology of folk songs so obscure that not even ancient folklorists will challenge you. Cooking asparagus is not recommended due to Jupiter's transection with the dark side of the moon. Cancer, June the 21st to July the 22nd. As a Cancerian, you have always mistrusted horoscopes ever since your parents dropped you in a tank of live crabs on your second birthday. Avoid drinking real ale, as you know it only makes you go to the toilet all night. Leo, July the 23rd to August the 22nd. A creative project won't turn out as you thought it would because of that bloody effing full moon on September the 14th. But don't draw a line in the sand, because you'll just look like a lonely old weirdo doing that on the beach. This month is a good time to start trampolining in your front garden to tunes by Chumbawamba. I've always had a thing about, these footballers who cross their chests and when they score a goal. And I was thinking, how it's not fair to have God on your side of a football team, is it really? It's just not fair. So this is called the power of prayer. The footballer stood and crossed his chest. God was on his side. He looked up to the heavens where angels do abide. He ran up to take the penalty, filled with religious pride. He scuffed the ball, fell on his arse and kicked the bugger wide and became an atheist on the spot. Thank you. I sometimes listen to Ken Bruce programme on Radio 2, and he has a phone-in Popmaster quiz programme, and afterwards he asks people if they want to say a quick hello, a dedication, and this one bloke went on and on and on with this list of people. So I wrote this. This is called a quick hello, and in this I play the part of Ken Bruce, very badly, with a very bad Scottish accent, and myself. So a quick hello. Well played, Robert. Shame you lost. Would you like to say a quick hello? Thanks, Ken. Yeah, I'd like to say hello to my lovely wife, Roxy, to my wonderful family, Roxanne, Roxette, Rock Salmon, Rock Solid, Rock Steady, Rock Hudson, Rocky Marciano, Rocky Balboa, Bilbo Baggins, Rocky 1, Rocky 2, Rocky 3, Rocky 4, Billy Bragg, Billy Whiz, Johnny Fartpants, Johnny Rotten, Dot Cotton, Fern Britton, Benjamin Britton, Daniel Whitten, Harry Hawke, old Uncle Tom Cobley and all. My friends who work at Brittany Ferries, Britney Spears, Brian Ferry, Brian Wilson, Wilson Pickett, Brian Adams, Ryan Adams, Adam Faith, Paloma Faith, Blind Lemon Jefferson, Jefferson Airplane, Jefferson Starship, Jefferson Spaceship, Kevin Spacey, and my perfect cousin, Kevin, and my mates, Mick, Keith, Charlie, Ronnie, Wood, Ronnie, Ancona, Ronnie Biggs, Raymond Biggs, Mr. Big, Mr. Jones, Barbie Girl, Barbie Doll, Dolly Parton, Dolly Mixtures, Little Mix, Mixomatosis, Halitosis, the Halley Orchestra, Halle Berry, Chuck Berry, Berry Gordy, Gordon Lightfoot, Gordon is a moron, Peter and Gordon, Pete Shelley, Percy Bish Shelley, Mary Shelley, Shelley Winters, Mike and Bernie, Bernie Sanders, Colonel Sanders, Bernie Eccleston, Ecky Thump, Donald Trump, Donald Duck, Donovan, Caravan, Van Morrison and Alanis Morissette. And everyone else who knows me, Doc Martin, Martin Jarvis, Jarvis Cocker, Joe 90, Jolene, Joe Biden, Joe Johnson, Boris Becker, Boris Karloff, Carly Simon, Joni Mitchell, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Paul Young, Fine Young Cannibals, Hannibal, Lecter, Phil, Spector, Phil, Adelphia, Cream, Bread, Meatloaf and The Sweet. Not forgetting my ex-girlfriends Meryl, Cheryl, Beryl, Sue Prue, Lou, Mo, Flo, Joe, Jilly, Millie, Billy, Meg, Peg, Anne, Fran, Jan, Pam, Winnie, Minnie, Nora, Dora, Clora and Flora and all my ex-wives in St Ives and my toy boy Roy in Foy. Anyone else, Robert? No thanks, Ken. That's it. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
I've written a piece about earthworms. I am no expert on earthworms. It's just based on a little bit of internet research and talking to a few people who absolutely love earthworms. So here it is. Earthworms. Let's be a little bit subversive and look at an underground movement with a long history that is hugely important but often overlooked. The life and times of the simple earthworm, Lumbricus terrestris. Aristotle referred to them as the intestines of the earth. My brother-in-law is an organic farmer, and what he seems to care most about is the welfare of earthworms. It's true, he bases the fertility of the soil he tends to on the number of worms frolicking in the earth beneath his feet. And when you think about it, our lives depend on healthy soil. Whether you're an omnivore, carnivore, vegetarian or vegan, whatever you eat is fed by soil rich in nutrients. A good indication of the earth's health is the number of worms turning over, burrowing, munching, digesting, excreting, multiplying, and breathing air into the soil. These wriggly little critters can bury treasure, much to archaeologists' annoyance, and build burrows that would put any prison tunnel escapade to shame. Charles Darwin was fascinated by worms. His last book, The Formation of Vegetable Mould Through the Action of Worms, with observations on their habits, was based on 40 years of study, which included him shouting at them and playing a variety of musical instruments, such as the piano, bassoon and tin whistle, just to find out if they had a sense of hearing. I don't know about you, but I'm picturing Darwin banging a pair of cymbals and two earthworms sighing and cursing the day they bumped into this strange human. Darwin also wanted to know if worms had a sense of smell. He found they didn't respond to tobacco, perfume, sage, thyme or mint, but they did like the smell of cherry leaves, cabbage, horseradish, carrot and celery. His admiration for the earthworm is captured in his concluding words. There are few animals which have played so important a part in the history of the world than the earthworm. Some more interesting facts about earthworms. They are hermaphrodites, having both male and female reproductive cells, though they still need a partner to mate. They can also regenerate missing parts, so if you accidentally slice a chunk out of one, it's likely to survive. Cutting it in half, though, is not advised. They don't have lungs and breathe through their skin instead. They also don't have teeth, but they do have strong mouth muscles, making them excellent kissers, according to Darwin. They're also missing eyes, but can be paralysed by light, so avoid it at all costs. Last year, I went through a phase of knitting worms with Save Our Soil labels attached to them as a way of raising awareness about the importance of looking after our earth. Although I knitted many different sizes of worms, they all had lovely orange saddles, otherwise known as clitella. That belt-like bulge you see in worms where eggs are stored. My brother-in-law asked me why I was only knitting mature worms. Young worms don't have the saddle, you see. I couldn't help remarking I was surprised he recognised the clitellum. Many men aren't aware of their existence. Did I mention that earthworms are extremely sensitive to vibrations? Dave is the largest earthworm discovered in Britain, at about 20 centimetres long. That's nearly 16 inches. He weighs about the same as a chocolate flake. If you listen very hard and step a little closer, you will now hear Dave snoring in his burrow. hear that again. This is Dave snoring in his burrow. I asked a friend to pen a poem about worms, so thank you, Fran Leek, for the following lines. There's often a worm ready to churn soil in your back garden, but often we do cut them in two, so worms, we beg your pardon. Finally, if you want to become a member of this underground movement, check out the Earthworm Society of Britain and make your preparations for World Earthworm Day on the 21st of October 2020. The theme this year is Super Composters. Mozart will be turning in his grave, literally, thanks to these impressive little diggers. Thank you. Part 2. Surprise. A sting in the tail. This section captures a more sinister aspect of planet Earth, particularly around human relations. It starts with a short story by Francis Evans entitled Safe. Then we have a selection of poems written by Ben Beattie. This is followed by Timothy Evans reading an extract from his novel The Fatigue of Zennor Teague. Then we have something a little different, a surprise, a piece of oral storytelling that was recorded by Ella Walsworth-Bell for the Decameron Project. The Decameron Project is being run by the 6 Foot Stories team, so check out their website if you want to find out more about the 100 Stories project. Enjoy.
Good evening. This is my story, Safe. I wake up and pain hits me, a searing pain in my head that intensifies as I open my eyes. The daylight is blinding. I close them, aware of pain all over my body. I don't know what's happened to me or where I am. I'm lying on a hard, stony surface outdoors. When I carefully open my eyes again, I see the whiskers of a white Highland Terrier pushing at my face. I try to focus, and the dog looks back at me. It yips, hopefully, and puts a paw on my arm. I try to raise myself up, and a wave of nausea comes over me as the pain in my head swells and lurches with every movement. I push my hair out of my face and feel a huge bump the size of an egg on my head. So I have a head injury, but I don't know how I got it. The dog pushes at me again, and I grab hold of its collar to read the disc hanging from it. Oscar is engraved on one side and a phone number on the other. Must be my dog, but I don't remember him. Oscar, I say, and he yips again, wagging his tail. He doesn't appear to be injured, and I wonder where we are. Above me is a big sky, rocks towering around us, a foamy sea far below. We're on a rocky ledge, about 5 feet deep. Looking down at the sea makes me nauseous again, and I scramble away from the edge, yelling in pain as I move my left leg. My ankle is agony, maybe broken. There's an opening in the rock face behind me, a small cave, and I move back into its shelter. I sit with my back against the rock, trying to quell the sickness that rises up in my throat. I can't, and I throw up bitter bile. Oscar sits watching, his head on one side. My thoughts are fuzzy, confused, and I can't remember how we got here, or even who I am. I know I have hit my head, and must have been knocked unconscious. The sun glints on Oscar's name tag, and I think of the phone number. Phone? Where is my phone? I'm wearing a t-shirt, grey jeans, white trainers, and a thin blue hoodie. There is a tissue in one pocket and a door key in the other. No phone and no bag nearby. My hands, forearms, and judging by the rips in my jeans, my legs, are scraped raw and embedded with small stones. If Oscar and I fell down that cliff onto this ledge, as I suspect, we've had a very narrow escape. But why can't I remember? Why would I have gone so close to the edge? Did the dog fall first and I try to rescue him? I gripped the rock for support and pushed myself up, putting all the weight onto my right leg and holding the left off the floor. A weak sun has appeared, and I hobble forward to gain some of its warmth and search the cliff face above me. There is no way I can climb up with 2 good legs, let alone 1. I slump down onto my backside with a sigh. Oscar sighs too, putting his head between his outstretched paws. Well, Oscar, we're in a right pickle. No phone, so how can I call for help? I probably say this more optimistically than I feel, because he looks up expectantly. I'm wearing a Fitbit tracker, and the time says 12:30, the date 3rd September. That doesn't help, as I can't remember what date it was before the accident. So it's a tracker, right? Perhaps that means they could track my whereabouts and find us. But that's assuming they would know I need to be tracked. And does anyone even know I'm missing? It's pleasantly warm in the sun, but I have no protection against the weather, no food or water. I obviously didn't set out prepared for a long trek. I don't know which hurts most, head or ankle. I close my eyes and pass out. It's dark and cold. I can't see any stars. There is a mist of rain covering the sky. Oscar is stretched out along the length of my legs. I'm shivering. I shuffle into the protection of the cave and hug him tightly into my chest for warmth, wondering if and when someone might find us. Early morning, a thin grey light. My mouth is parched, my stomach growling. The tracker now reads 4 September. I crawl into the back of the cave to pee. The dog has already been here and left a small deposit. He must be hungry and thirsty too. He has woken up and whines at me, as if to say, "Come on, I've had enough of this game. Let's go home." Home. Where is that anyway? I gaze at the swirling sea far below. I recognise the Cornish coast. Its bleak and desolate outlook. I can't see how anyone will spot us here, unless by chance someone on the opposite cliffs is looking through binoculars. A keen bird watcher, perhaps. I can hope for that. A day passes with me falling in and out of sleep. Sleep is the blessed relief from pain and the worry that we're going to die here on this ledge from dehydration and exposure. How long can a human or a dog survive with no water? I think I read somewhere it was about 3 days. We may have been here 3 days already. Oscar is clearly depressed and listless. He no longer raises his head hopefully when I shuffle about. It's night time again and cold. Oscar and I huddle together. "It's okay," I say to him over and over, trying to reassure us both. Just as the dawn breaks, I wake again, and it's raining. Rainwater is collecting in small crevices in the rocks. I wake Oscar and show him the tiny water bowls, persuade him to drink. He licks half-heartedly at it. I find my own bowl and lap like a dog myself. I dip my fingers in it and wipe water across my face, try to wash my hands. The charge has run out on my Fitbit now, so I no longer know the date or time. I will have to try and keep track of the days and nights. It has rained a bit, and we've had a few sips of water, but I feel exhausted, my limbs weak, and my whole body hurts. My mind is still confused. Thoughts, memories, come and go in a dreamlike state, and I know that I'm drifting in and out of consciousness. Another day and night has passed. I'm worried about Oscar. He's hardly moving at all now, and is disinterested when I try to get him to drink the rainwater. He's given up. How long before I do? Lying inside the cave is no good in daylight. I lie out on the ledge so there's a chance some walker on the other side of the bay might see us. This day might be the 4th or 5th I can't tell now. The sun is high and warm. I drowse, and I think it might not be so bad to just let go and die here with the sun on me. No more worries. Strange memories have been surfacing, none of them pleasant. A man's angry, bloated face pushed into mine, fingers gripping my upper arms so they bruise. I hear his spiteful words designed to crush my confidence. You're so fucking stupid, Laura. You know that? Why can't you do anything right? Laura, Laura. That's me. I'm snoozing and become aware of a mechanical drowning sound. I sit up quickly, my head spinning. A drone. It's hovering over the sea, about 30 feet away. Then it buzzes closer. I wave frantically and shout. I mouth help a few times and write SOS in the air with my finger. The drone bobs in closer and I know that it has seen me. I feel strangely bereft as the drone pulls back suddenly and zooms away, soon out of sight. But hope, relief flood over me. Sometime soon the drone camera will be inspected and they will see us. I crawl across to where Oscar is lying. His tail twitches slightly as I put my hand on his side. They found us, Oscar. They found us. Someone will come. It's going to be okay. His tail twitches again limply, but his eyes remain closed. I try to stay alert, but I feel so tired I can't keep my eyes open. How long, I wonder, how long before the operator checks his camera, and will he send help? I don't know how much time has passed. The sun is fading a little. I hear the chopper blades long before it swings into sight and makes a pass across the bay in front of us. I sit up and wave, and the helicopter seems to do a little bow of acknowledgement, then passes quite close by. So I feel the draft, and a man leans out, waving. We've been found. We're safe. We're still alive, and we're going to be okay. Relief, exhaustion. I can let go now. I am barely aware of the man winching down, strapping me to him, Oscar held tightly in his arms. Hands pull me in, lay me down, put a blanket over me. You're all right, love. It's all right. You're safe now. I'm in a hospital bed. I have drips and tubes and wires attached to me. It's warm and comfortable, and I feel no pain. I open my eyes and a nurse with a kind face smiles at me. Good morning, she says. Feeling better? I nod. My throat is too sore to speak. We couldn't find any identification on you, the nurse says. What's your name? Oscar, I croak. She laughs. That's your dog's name. He is being treated at the vet's, but he's going to be all right. What's your name? I shake my head weakly and drift away again. Hours later, another nurse comes in. She's carrying a shopping bag that she says contains my clothes, phone and a handbag. At least we know who you are now. We don't have to call you Miss X. She smiles. I must still look confused and out of it. Laura Davis, she says. You were staying at a holiday cottage. The police have been and picked up your things. They want to come and talk to you when you're feeling up to it. We have told them maybe tomorrow. Laura Davis, staying at a holiday cottage. Memories have started to return, but I push them away and slip into medicated oblivion. The consultant has been to see me and says he's pleased with my progress. My head injury was not serious, no lasting damage, but I was suffering from dehydration, concussion and trauma, he said, resulting in short-term memory loss. My ankle is badly sprained, not broken, so it should heal quickly, and the rest is just cuts and bruises. Oscar is recovering well and making himself very popular at the vet's. After lunch, I'm deemed fit to have the police visit me. 2 women police officers arrive and introduce themselves. One does all the talking. The other stands behind her, notebook in hand. The one talking takes the chair by the bed and leans towards me, her face concerned. So, Laura, how are you feeling? Can you tell us what happened to you? I shake my head. My memory is vague. I only remember coming to lying on the ledge in pain. I must have fallen down the cliff with Oscar, but I can't remember how or when. She nods agreement. The cliff surface is weak and crumbly there. It's very dangerous. We think you must have been trying to save your dog. She goes on to tell me that I was missing for 5 days. The holiday cottage cleaner had come and found all the stuff unused, thought it was strange, and when she heard about the rescue of a woman and dog from the North Cliffs, contacted the police. I'm eternally grateful to Ryan, the 12-year-old drone operator who saw me on his camera and phoned the emergency services. The police went to the holiday cottage, found my phone and bag on the table. The cottage cleaner packed all my stuff and it's being kept until I'm out of hospital. The policewoman's face becomes serious. Laura, you're going to have to face some very bad news, I'm afraid, she says. You and Oscar weren't alone. Your husband Pete is missing, and we have had a call about a man's body being washed up further down the coast. We are fairly sure, from items on the body, that it's him. I'm so sorry. We think he fell over the cliff and into the sea. Perhaps he was trying to reach you. I sob. Tears run down my cheeks. The policewoman pats my hand. They've looked at my phone, she says, and contacted my sister Alison, who is coming down tomorrow. I understand this is all very sudden and you're overwhelmed. We will leave you to rest now. I'm so sorry for your loss, she says. The nurse bustles in and administers a sedative, and I float off on a fluffy cloud. I'm awake and thinking over what they have told me. Of course I remember Pete. My abusive alcoholic husband Pete, who delights in hurting me and teasing my poor dog. I booked the cottage to get away from him for a few days, but he insisted on coming, and it was easier to let him come than fight. It was good weather when we arrived at the cottage, and Pete downed a few beers in the garden, while I unloaded the car, unpacked and cooked us a meal. I had a couple of glasses of wine. He polished off the bottle and started on the whisky as usual. It was a fine evening, still light. I said, I'm taking Oscar out for a walk. I'll come with you, he said. We strolled through the town, and nobody noticed a middle-aged couple with a little white dog. I went up onto the grassy open space of the cliffs, and Pete, grumbling, began throwing the ball for Oscar. Oscar loves his ball. Caught up in the joy of the moment, he chased gleefully after the ball as Pete threw it further and further. Next thing, my breath catches in my throat as Pete deliberately lobs the ball over the cliff. Time stands still as I watch the yellow tennis ball arc through the sky, the dog, with all 4 feet off the ground, flying after it. Pete stands on the cliff edge looking down, laughing. Stupid fucking dog, he sneers. He's got no sense. I run towards him. My hands, acting of their own accord, reach out. Push. Pete, like the tennis ball, arcs through the air and plummets to the sea, limbs flailing. The momentum causes me to lose my footing. Stones slide under my feet, and I tumble headfirst down towards the ledge 20 feet below, where Oscar is barking excitedly. My head hits rock, and I'm knocked out. There's a faint sunlight shining through the window. Outside the door I can hear familiar, comforting hospital sounds. Later today, Alison will arrive to help me through the next few days, but for now I can relax and rest, knowing I'm safe.
Hi, I'm Ben Beattie. I live in Constantine. Many of us during lockdown took to our notebooks and diaries as a way of making sense of the changes happening to our way of life, or at least as a way of cataloguing our emotional state. Lockdown in April also coincided with National Poetry Writing Month, where you pledged to write a poem a day. Despite numerous attempts, the space afforded me on furlough from my job as a civil engineer. This is the only year I've managed to complete the month. I've worked on a few of those poems since that I thought were promising, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to share them with you now. Case 19. The People versus Mr. Pangolin. Court is in session. Mr. Pangolin, you stand accused of spreading vicious rumours, slanderous accusations, panic, and a virulent and deadly disease among humans. How do you plead? Mr. Pangolin, from one beady black eye, considers the mountain. Briefly, he licks the other. Not guilty on all counts, slithers his boa solicitor. The mountain rumbles. The prosecution calls Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, you could be considered somewhat of an expert on the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, I suppose, having caught the damned thing, and of course, having attended a Cobra meeting, the boa tuts. Objection, Your Highness. Is he peer-reviewed? Gosh, well, rah! Johnson blusters, continuing to upset the stenographer. Sustained rumbles. Mr. Pangolin's testimony. They think my scales are medicine, my flesh a special treat. They believe with breath in me I'm tastier to eat. They snatched me from my jungle as they burned it to the ground and caged me with some circumstantial evidence they've found. The mountain passes sentence. Skies are wiped of white lines and fill with stars. Birdsong drowns the sounds of the street. The ground stops shaking. Sonnet 19. This year, spring seems reluctant to appear. The gorse's foolish gold may dust the hills, but blackthorn barely breaks a bud. We hear, instead of mating calls, the piercing trills of songbirds fending buzzards from their nest. Show me the lines of Keats that work today, how Wordsworth's daffodils can help address such blossoming that takes our breath away. This isolation's playing tricks on me. Now memory of touch would have a price, and lives become some web soliloquy to bury in a plague of bad advice. This spring will come. It rages as we speak, and when we meet again, I'll kiss your cheek. Palm grease. I kid you not, echidna snot, if snorted, sorts you out. The price is going up a lot, there's not that much about. I've got a bit of primo shit. You're welcome to a spot. It's got a decadence to it that's fashionably hot. You see, it's exclusivity that gives echidna clout. You hit them with an SUV to milk them from the snout, then use a tiger tooth to pick the dried bits from its lips, mix in a pinch of rhino dick and feather with the tips of reef shark fins and manta wings and stir it really well, using a spoony thing in bowls of tortoise shell. It's packed in vampire backgut bags and slapped into a mule and then banged out to all you slags. This stuff is rocket fuel. Of course, it's not the cheapest gear. You'll never guess its worth. For just this little sample here, it's gonna cost the earth. Jobs I couldn't do. I'm not the bloke to coach you how to pass exams, or nightly feed the needy soup, or handle some kid's meltdown in my class, or chair an ADHD focus group. I've no desire to pick your rotten fruit, or wipe the sick from some old racist's chin, and not the one to wear a paper suit because a coughing girl needs insulin. That's not to say that I can't do what's right. I'll talk and hold their hand until they're gone, but that's impossible 3 times a night, and I've no strength to tell someone their son needs extra ventilation for his chest, but he must wait in line with all the rest. Bees live in the attic. There's buzzing in the attic still, and buzzing in the walls. I'm using a pneumatic drill to open up some holes. Now there's buzzing everywhere, and plaster dust and smoke. There's buzzing from my derriere, but I can't see the joke. They buzz before each cigarette, dyslexia my font, and buzz the television set to tell me what I want. They buzz the bearings in the car, though I've just done the clutch. There's always buzzing at the bar that thinks I drink too much. They buzz that it's the immigrants who strain the NHS, that hell deserves the militants too lazy for success. Then buzz that vaccines hurt your kids, and soon the earth will cook, while humming under Xbox lids. Don't ever read a book. I need more holes to stop this sound. Holes stop this buzzing dead. Turn the hammer drill around and put some in my head. The birds. So far today, I've watched a laughing man who hurts complicit mates for YouTube hits, 2 episodes of Fleabag, and Matt Hancock crowing that he's found some testing kits. I bumble out the back for space to think, but all the thrushes boast their healthy throats relentlessly, condemning me to drink the first glass of the day and check my notes. Nothing. Just lines of calls phonetically scrawled across the page as if the birds were teasing me with flawless poetry. I want to share their hopeful song, but words seem stuck behind a bottleneck of doubt, like I'm too short of breath to spit them out. Medical genius. This one's a double dactyl. POTUS, this self-serving puppet of moneymen, uses his platform for drug-pushing spree. Those buying stocks in his hydroxychloroquine all die from coughing fits profitably. So those were my COVID poems. I hope you like them. But also, when you're doing National Poetry Writing Month, you pulling ideas from all sorts of directions, and they don't always have to be about current concerns and global pandemics. So I've written a couple of small poems just to finish off the 10-minute time slot this evening. This one is called Kerno. This fisherman, he had a song to sing, how Kerno come up in a land of kings, and how in all the deepest holes has been, he'll find a cousin Jack who's pulling strings. He's all the 4 giants at a scrap, and 4 tregeagles cursed to trape some more. This lizard beast blew in to have a nap, whose granite scales grew black against the shore. Her ever breath is what's on in a tide, her snore'll boil her coastline to a foam. Her sneeze'll bring in waves the attackers ride, her handsomeness is why I call her home. And back along, and pumping through her heart, her lizard veins are pulsing liquid tin, and tinners tipping riches in a cart, is how a dying beast'll crown a king. And my last one this evening is Fat Tiger. I met a tiger in Bhutan who'd eaten every kind of man, from Bangladesh to Pakistan. It made him very fat. He said that of the human race, its vegans have the sweetest taste. Their sanctimony in a paste had made him very fat. Second best, he next confessed, were probably maidens in distress. The ones who wore a pretty dress had made him very fat. He had no issue in the least with snatching children unpoliced, and they were such an easy feast. It made him very fat. With burning eyes he said to me, the secret is consistency. I'm even having you for tea. And that, he said, was that.
Hello, my name is Tim Evans. I was born in Falmouth. After school, I left. I've spent many years overseas, but kept in touch. 3 years ago, I came back to live here. My writing is incomplete. This is the start. When I walk through the streets of Falmouth, my childhood self walks beside me and leads me to begin The Fatigue of Zennor Teague. The man stood on the cliff with a sore head full of questions. Should he move closer? Where should he put his right foot? Where the left? What was the time? His watch showed nearly 9:30. The bus for bus pass people would be along directly. The waves were way below him. He could not feel them, but he could see them and hear them. One wrong footing and goodbye to the sandwich sitting on the bench. Looking down upon the meal was a bench memorial plate. Betty and Jack, united in the great hereafter. They loved this bench. It never said if they had launched themselves into the hereafter from this very place the man was now standing upon. Were Betty and Jack now calling him? Zennor Teague stood firm. One step forward and he would be deep in Cornish coastal waters, disturbing the Coast Guard ever vigilant above him. He stepped forward. He felt giddy, blood pressure. Then he saw it way below. The Muji umbrella. The umbrella that had slipped from his hands. No, it was no good. It was gone, out of reach. He should have rolled it up and put it in its pouch. So he just stood there. The child stood in the garden. Mr. Jones, the milkman, coming up the steps. The poodle barking. Zennor considered his life. So much come and go. However, there across the river stood the pink cottage with the thatch roof. He never saw anyone there. When he grew up, he would row over there, knock on the door, ask for a glass of water. The lady would be beautiful. Winds and gusts had blown so many parts of his life up and away. So many things should have been rolled up and kept in their pouch. The bus came into view. He raised his arm for the first time without his Muji umbrella. The signs looked worrisome. He took out his blue penknife and started to scratch into the bench. I have tried in my way to be free. He got as far as tried. Zennor sat on the right side of the bus. If he had paid the full fare, he would not have to show any ID. If he wanted to save a few quid, he had to show his treasured bus pass. The driver would then know his name and make silly remarks. Ha! Some nasty bends round you, Zennor. Witless, yet true. The hell of being named after a place. It was bad enough amongst friends and new acquaintances. Oh, Zen man, said to him with a certain belief that this was the first time Zennor had heard this diminutive. Let it pass. And yet, if he had a daughter, she would be Rogera or Prose, but never Beeble. The bus pass was a treasure. He was excited when it whizzed through the letterbox. He wanted to hang it round his neck all day. This bus pass had something extra. He liked the way St. George Cross swept across it, like a red ribbon round a gift. There the red rose, there the words Cornwall county-wide, there the... He had been puzzled about the absence of the Cornish flag, the cross of St. Piran. However, his eyes had just pounced on this new word, absent from his copy of Chambers. County-wide. Not countrywide, then. Interesting. What a loathsome, vapid word that was. What you say when sitting on the fence. Interesting. Most people were jealous of his name, the Jims and the Jasons, the Evanses and the Elliots. What a name he had. Zennor. Zennor Teague. The bus was stopping, but there was no one at the stop. Interesting. An invisible person stepped on, a small woman, and, to be more precise, struggled on with a trolley, an umbrella, and an M&S flower bag, made in Vietnam. He had the whole collection. He stepped over and helped her in. She followed him and sat beside him with her legs dangling. Somehow, during this physical transaction, her wet umbrella had ended up on his lap. No worries. He had his Rohan Globetrotter raincoat protecting him. He now had to get another umbrella, though. Something from H&M in Truro. So, how are you, Alice? Quite well, thank you. Thank you seemed like an afterthought. He was relieved that she had not used his name. He once admitted this insecurity to someone who quite rightly responded, "Well, change it, dear boy, to Nate or Ned," like those awful families who call their children Milo, Miranda, and Malpus. Ugh! Although he had always wanted to change his family's name to his mother's maiden name. Much more posh. The bus continued on its way in third gear, causing seagulls to rise and squeal. What brilliant flyers, yet such awful eaters they were. He had a friend who had... No, he had better not think that way at the moment. Better not go there, as they say. Who the hell are they? "Where are you going, Alice?" To which he knew the answer. The M&S coffee shop, what would have been called a tea room back in the 50s. He had made the acquaintance of Alice there, in the food hall to be correct, with those essential toilets for the golden ages. She was only an acquaintance. Diminutive was too long a word to describe her. "I'm shrinking," she later told him. At their first meeting, she was struggling with 2 bags and trying to read something on the top shelf. Not a Swiss roll. A flan, was it? Anyway, he suggested, being the owner of a bad back, that she should get his needs from the lower shelf while he could get hers from the top. He did not like to use the term top shelf. It had other meanings. People might be listening while they hovered over the current offers in the pizza range. Alice was excited by this joint exercise, but they never actually did anything except talk about their advancing age. If she was an American, she would have said something like, "Time is a school in which we learn." But she was more Joan Bakewell than Joan Didion. "I'm getting off after M&S, he offered. He had decided to go to Trago Mills, an emporium that sold everything to what the Guardian readers call working-class Tories. Zennor had once gone in there, Trago, reluctantly to search for suit covers, and with the help of an extremely obsequious salesperson, had found all he desired. The staff knew where everything was. Trago placed stuff in quite random places. He had at the time come to purchase mothballs. Their modern replacements were in the gardening section. Anyway, he was going to Trago again. He was going in search of air pellets for an air rifle. Not his, of course. He was helping a friend who was going to kill. Alice brought him back to reality at the next bus stop. She was off to M&S. Could you get me a Swiss roll, Alice, please? The red and white one." He could not recall the fruit. Alice rose from her seat, puffing. "Well, you can collect it from my place. I'll be back by 12. Nothing more was said. The bus moved on. Zennor studied the enormous bottom of the person 1 row forward. 23. Definitely. This was in honour of a boy called Trefusis at school, whose bottom was so wide, someone got a tape measure and discovered its width. Seated, it was 23 inches. And so in the time-honoured way of grammar schools, Trefusis became known with some affection as 23, for the rest of his academic life at least. The heavy person on the bus was sadly not privy to this Callipygian anecdote. Now there was a word, brought to his attention by a sad schoolmate who had intimate relationship with the Chambers Dictionary, 10th edition. This rustic gent desired to be a crossword compiler, but only got as far as being cross. Zennor steered his mind away from that story, that sorry life story, and there was Trago. Off the bus, he began searching for his shopping list. Only one item. Why, oh why, had he agreed to get air rifle pellets for a friend who had been in the army, for goodness sake? Someone had called him shell-shocked in a shell suit. Zennor decided to get the damn box of pellets and head for Swiss Roll Avenue as fast as his legs, his bus pass, could transport him there. What was that about a brisk 10-minute walk on the BBC? People said retired was boring, and it was only 10 a.m., 30 minutes after the bus pass start time. He was in a row in the aforementioned Tragos. in a row marked Women's Pharmaceuticals. Whenever he thought too much, it caused him to stare dreamily at whatever was in front of him. What was in front of him at this moment was I, Podinsky, for your intimate places, with love from XXXXX. Crikey. Trago was importing you-know-what down there from over there. In this case, Estonia, a Baltic blocker. It was now 35 minutes after the start of the bus past starting time. Zennor saw a young man loitering with a tent. Intent, one might say. He did not. The young man had the Trago logo on his chest and appeared to want rescuing from a half-built one-man, one-person tent. That looked like his intention. I'm looking for air rifle bullets. Do you have them? Follow me, sir, whispered Trago logo, stepping out of his dirigible balloon, now deflating. On we go. I think it's pellets, not bullets, sir, and we stock Diablo. And he added what sounded like a warning. That is Spanish for devil. Is your rifle .177 or .22, sir? 500 in a tin, but we have to know the bore of sir's rifle. There they were at the end of Women's Pharmaceuticals. Focus, the bore of sir's rifle. It sounded like something he dare not venture towards. Ex-Sergeant Daniel, who owned the rifle, had not told him anything. This had happened once before when asked to buy condoms for a friend. The boot salesperson had asked if it was smooth or ripped that he required. Both have their moments, sir, more cheekily said than the normal checkout lady. He made his excuses and left the shop. Boots and Tragos. Now, what was that Western on television when he was a boy? Cavalry, black and white, boots and saddles. He had found it on YouTube looking for Orvis, the outdoor supplier. Another hopper bus arrived. He jumped on it. Take me to Swiss Roll Avenue, he internalized. Unburdened by the weight of 500 bullet pellets, he hummed a tune. 500 miles, 500. Then he considered if he might lean upon Alice's wisdom and tell her about the rifle and the killing fields. It was ABC, really. A had to blend with the other two. Wind, rain, and coats. Sun, sand, and you-know-what. Sponge, cream, and blackcurrant jam. The perfect Swiss roll. Zennor believed he could live off these tubular cakes, no longer called Swiss, now the sponge roll. Was this another EU initiative? He was tempted to ask Janice across the road from his abode. She looked like a cook on one of those TV programs, all hair and in a hurry. Janice was in her 30s, and to use an Irish PE teacher's phrase, easy on the eye. Zennor once asked her how she stayed fit. He wanted to say trim, but that might be misinterpreted. She explained she was a gig rower. A gig was a long rowing boat peculiar to the West Country. It was the original lifeboat, now a racing boat with a world championship in the Scilly Isles. To get off her body, so to speak, he had inquired of her what the setup was. 6 women in her boat and a bloke who sits in the stern shouting and steering and getting bloody wet. He imagined that was a small burden to bear for 6 pairs of lycra thighs straining endlessly but fruitlessly towards him. The man, their coxswain in question, found that it was too great a burden too. He slumped dead in the boat as they crossed the winning line. Quite recently, an observer on the quay was of the opinion that the coxswain had to be buried at sea. What a way to go. And he went. Zennor approached Swiss Roll Avenue, Sponge Roll Avenue, the toilet being the first port of call. When is a Google map going to indicate public toilets? Who advised old men to never pass a toilet, never waste an erection, and never trust a fart? Someone with experience in all 3, no doubt. He opened the door of Alice's dreary bungalow and said, It's only me, and I'm going by the comfort room. They both disliked Americanisms and tried to stop each other. Gally gee, you always need a pee, sang Alice to the tune of an Irish folk song, whose title escaped them both. Sated from the toilet, Zennor bounded into the tea room and grabbed the first slice of the Swiss. Paradise. And then the latest coffee. Instant. None of the poncy ground beans. They became seated and quiet, munching and musing. She stared at the blank TV screen, he the repaired vase on the table. He loved repairing things, but this was not the time. He looked at the lady. You ever fired a rifle, Alice?
Oh, that's cold. I've got to get in the water soon though. Going for my daily swim. Makes me feel sane. Ow. And going into the sea is a little bit like falling in love. You can go in two ways, really. My mum goes in gradually. She puts her toes in first, then her legs. Then she's swimming, graceful as a swan, gliding over the water with her head above the water, her arms and legs working furiously. She never gets her hair wet. My dad, on the other hand, launches straight in, head under the water, arms and legs thrashing. He doesn't mind about running out of air or the salt hitting the back of his throat. He just gets straight in there, face first. And I guess when I was younger, I fell in love a little bit like that. I didn't so much launch myself into love, as I pretty much drowned in it. And sometimes out there, it was wild and it was wonderful. At other times, it was kind of cold and icy, and I dropped to the bottom of the ocean like a stone. Until I did meet someone, but that's another story. And now I'm going to tell you a story within a story. Far out there, around the curvature of the earth, is a community of Japanese fisherwomen. I love the way they pick women because their stamina and they have more experience. I like that. And these fisherwomen dive down to the very bottom of the ocean and they scrabble about in the mud and the dirt. And to breathe, they hold a tube clamped between their teeth. And if you've ever tasted stale air through a snorkel, you'll know how revolting that is. Anyhow, they dive to the bottom of the ocean and they scrabble about in the dirt and the mud, and they find oysters. Oh, I think I saw one then, but I didn't. It would be too much luck. And they find an oyster and they bring it back up to the surface, to the glittering surface above them, in a net bag that gets heavier and heavier. On the deck of the boat, they smash open the oysters with a knife. It's not a very lucrative job, this. So every 10 oysters, there's nothing at all. 20, nothing. Maybe in the 50th oyster, there might be a tiny speck of sand. And 9 times out of 10, the oyster would just spit it straight out. But with the 100th oyster, that grain of sand was almost as if it was meant for that oyster. The oyster holds it, lodges it deep in its heart, and all the rough edges from the sand comes off, all the irritating edges, and it tumbles and turns until it's something else entirely. It's warm to the skin, beautiful to look at, and valuable. I am coming, love. Give me a minute. I just need to have a swim first, you know.
Part 3. Home and Isolation. Each of these pieces is emotionally poignant. We start with Sara Valmai, poet, who reads the Boxes Trilogy. This is followed by a piece by Sara Clasper, artist and activist, a reflection, Through My Kitchen Window. Then we have a short story by John Lugo-Trebble, Sergeant's Personal Log 654. This section ends with a recommendation made to us by Jill Garrett. It's an animated poem, How to Be at Home, by filmmaker Andrea Dorfman and poet Tanya Davis. You can access it by clicking on the link on the screen. Please do.
Hello Telltales. My name is Sara Valmai. I've written poetry for almost 50 years. And I've read at Telltales several times over the years, since I've lived in Cornwall. I'd like to read today a trilogy which is called the Boxes Trilogy. The Shoebox. Discarded possessions, a pathetic and heartfelt reminder of our survival. Essential to make the same mistakes, repeat and procreate. Do we know when we've been beaten? Because we won't be told. Both foolish and admirable to always live in hope. The Sewing Box. Precious possessions, wooden reels of cotton, diarised decades in every colour. Press studs, buttons, scraps of material left over from old outfits, and the tartan pincushion shaped like bagpipes that belonged to my mum. The Refugee Box. Surplus possessions, donations filling cupboards, rabid consumerism, feeding economies, while others aren't safe, risk their lives and go hungry. Perhaps ignoring this is easier than facing it, or have we forgotten how else to live? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sara Clasper and I live in Portreath. So as part of the Penley Family Project, as a family we've been asked to write a few pieces and draw and illustrate the time that we spent over lockdown. And one of the images that we were sent was an empty window, and we had to draw or write about the view from our window. So I have done that. Here it is. Through my kitchen window, through my beautiful birch tree I planted for my dad, I have heard and seen the slow destruction of a hillside, drilled out, pinned back in preparation for 3 new houses, where once there was one small bungalow. The noise has been maddening, irritating and relentless, and started immediately after the first lockdown. It was sad that that time of quiet contemplation and slow stillness was pierced by man's greed.
Hi, I'm John Lugo-Trebble, and I'm originally from New York, but I now live in Gold, Sydney. Like many writers, I prefer to stay behind the keyboard, but 2020 has made me venture out of my comfort zone and take part in some virtual events, which has helped me gain an appreciation for the spoken word as well as the written. So far, I've published 2 books in the Everywhere series titled Lou's Outing and most recently The Deadbeat Club. I'm currently working on the 3rd book in the series. I also write short stories which have been published in a variety of places. If you want to find out more information on me, please go to my website at www.johnlugo-trebble.com. There you can subscribe to my newsletter. There's my social media contact info if you wish to follow me on any of those sites, as well as links to my work and other things I do, such as blogging and podcasting. So, without further delay, here's my piece. Sergeant's Personal Log 654. We knew it was time to go home when the radio sounded that emergency broadcast beep. We couldn't stop laughing at the sound when we first heard them testing that ridiculous noise. It was the worst Plutonese accent both Jasper and I had ever heard. It was as if they had learned Plutonese on holiday or something. The sound was supposed to warn people to seek shelter and not panic. Yeah, good luck with that. When the noise translated to, chicken centers will light up at 2 p.m. What did that even mean? Jasper and I bonded over humor. It was one of the things that made me realize how well matched we were. We hadn't known one another well, but we knew of one another. The Major only selected 100 to cover the galaxy, and we were part of that elite number. Didn't matter, though, how well we knew one another. We had our brief, and we had our objectives. The Major only chose recruits that would work well together. I wasn't prepared for the subjects to be as complicated as they turned out to be. They were ruled by emotions that were nonsensical. They knew the difference between right and wrong, but failed to act on it. They were like unsupervised Mercurian children playing with fireworks. How could a species be so idiotic? Jasper said as we fed the results back to the Major. I don't think it's as simple as that, I responded. Careful, Sergeant. He looked at me and smiled. You might be catching their condition. I smirked, but a little afraid that Jasper might report me to the Major for objectivity loss. We were not allowed to do so as per our mission. Any hint of loss meant being sent to an outpost somewhere to study single-celled bacteria, a boredom worse than death. Death was painless. Evolution had ensured that. Anyway, Sergeant, you wouldn't set your house on fire and still stay indoors as if nothing was happening, would you? Of course not. It's not even paid off yet, I laughed. Why else would I have signed up for this mission? I knew Jasper was right. It was part of their nature to create chaos and wallow in their plight. They even looked to the sky for something or someone to save them from their own choices. The Martians had done the same thing, and look what happened to them. Jasper had witnessed it firsthand. You'd never believe the cities they built. The planet overflowed with resources. They had an abundance of everything. They built a civilization on mutual understanding and equality. What happened? I asked. He sighed, and I could see a trickle from his eye cavity emerge. All it took was one being to not be satisfied with what they had, and suddenly it spread like a disease. Just one being needs to be discontent with their own wealth, their own health, their own reflection. It all starts with one, he said. Within a generation, they were at war with one another. They never saw it coming, but we did. Is that our purpose? I asked him. Of course, Sergeant, he said. We set them up, observe, and note it down for the archives. We check up on them and hope that our predictions are wrong, but so far, this planet has not surprised us. The skies lit up after the second bomb hit. The emergency signals blared out again, and yet this time we didn't laugh so much. We looked at one another as the last transmission to the Major was sent. It was time to go home. We held hands as the light enveloped us. I got a final glimpse at the red, green, blue skies over the human planet. It was a beautiful home they had never paid for. Perhaps if they had, they would have treated it better. Within minutes, we were back at Central Base Command. The debriefing would wait till the next day, though. The Major was in the pub by the time we returned, and both Jasper and I still had a commute from there to our own homes. My final analysis was that their idea of home was never clearly defined. They didn't understand it enough to care about it, and that is why they destroyed it. The Major looked down at my report after I handed it to him. He took his red pen out and wrote some notes. Sergeant, I have made some amendments. Please resubmit. He handed me the report and dismissed me with a wave. Nonsensical species number 456, final cause of extinction, failure to evolve. Although I didn't entirely agree, I didn't want to stay late in the office, so I typed up his amendments and resubmitted. Unlike the humans, I valued my home and my time there. Thank you.
And finally, I'd just like to thank Marcus Williamson, who continues to keep Telltales alive by giving his time so generously and ensuring everything is running well, up front and behind the scenes. Another big thank you too to all the contributors and those of you who listen in and ensure we have a community that continues to evolve and express itself creatively. The next Telltales event will be on Tuesday the 24th of November 2020. The theme will be A New Day. Keep an eye on our website to find out the deadline for submissions. Until then, take care and goodbye.